I feel like every time I finish a season of the show, I'm like, I don't know what the future of the show is. We all have these existential crises. Like, what am I going to do? You know, it takes so much to make it happen.
What's happening, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our show for Thursday, February 12th. Happy Valentine's Day out there to everybody who celebrates what's happening. How's everybody doing? On today's show, I have the one and only Mr. BJ Rubin from the BJ Rubin Show et al. He has so many venues. He also has Pukekos, his archive and label, the pukekos.org. You can also follow him on the Instagrams, Dude McGraw. That's at DUDDEMCGRAW. You can find him there. You can also go to YouTube. YouTube, and you just look up BJ Rubin, BJ RUBIN, and you can see his incredible show. We're going to talk a lot about it. It is a public access show. It is a throwback to a time that still exists, but you know, it was viral weirdos before the internet, right? I think that's kind of BJ's deal. He's a viral weirdo before the internet, but now there is the internet, and he's part of the internet world as well. So use the internet to find the viral weirdos. And BJ documents music and underground music and DIY music and art and experimental things in the greater Los Angeles tri-state area. I don't know, it's probably mostly Manhattan there, but you know, New York in general. And yeah, we get into it. We talk it all over here on the podcast. But yeah, I've known BJ for a bunch of years. Before No Age, you know, I had a band and we'd play and we'd go out east. And, BJ was friends of friends. We played with BJ's bands, was Putting on the Ritz, was a project, a duo that he had with, Storm and Stress, homie, drummer. I'm spacing on the name right now, but yeah, it's wild stuff. It's fun. It was art. It was weird. And we were hanging out in Brooklyn, you know, at 2 a.m, making weird art for other art weirdos. So it's fun. It's fun to catch up with BJ here. What the band I did, Rat Fist, was on the BJ Rubin Show, and it was really fun to get to do that because we were in a went to the public access building and loaded in and played sometime in the morning, and it was awesome and weird and fun. And I was glad. I think that's probably some of the only video content that still exists online. So, you know, again, documenting the weirdness that happens in small community experimental art spaces. That's BJ's gig. But yeah, we get into it. He talks about, you know, he's also archiving CDs. He's an archivist at heart, I think, in a lot of ways. And also a creative presenter. I don't know. I'll let him tell you more about it. But hope everyone's doing well. Hang in there. Fuck ice. Keep fighting. You know, we're here. We're here in February. It's cold for most of the country. A lot of parts of the world. It's cold here. But stay strong, stay vigilant, and keep fighting. And write me. You can find me on the Instagram at Randy S. Randall. And then you can also write the show hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com and share your music. Let me know what you're up to. Let me know what weird public access shows you have in your part of the world. I want to see them. Show them to me. And we can share them here. We can all be cool underground art weirdos together. Is that what it's all about? I think so.
I mean, you know, this is something I think a lot about because I feel like I do so many different things that I'm like, I'm a BJ, right? Yeah. And I know that you can't really put that on a business card. I guess like I was going through, I was going through some stuff earlier. I found some old business cards that had made up.
Yeah.
And it just, I mean, they still are relevant, you know, it just says, you know, cause I have the Pukekos blog that I've run for a long time. And so it just has like the Pukeko head on one side. And on the other side, it says BJ Rubin producer.
That's all you need.
And like
producer is one of those good words, cover all, catch all.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like producer is good because like a producer can do anything.
You make things, you produce things. Yeah.
you do shit, you get shit done, right? That's your job. And I feel like it's confusing. People are like, well, what does a producer do? And it's like, I don't know. It depends on the project. It depends on the person. Like, it's different every time. It's not like you go in and you're if you're a camera assistant, it's pretty clear what your role is, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're a producer, I mean, who knows? It could be anything. So,
it's purposely
I don't know.
vague. Yeah.
It's purposely vague. And so I kind of like that, even though, I enjoy directing, I enjoy performing, and I enjoy working with other artists. There are a lot of things that I enjoy. And I guess producer, is the easiest way to describe all that.
Yeah, I guess, hyphenate could just be another name for producer. Producers, kind of do everything. We've worked together. You've been in the host position. You've hosted a show on television. And that's continuing. Is that correct? Is that what I've gotten?
I still host. Yeah, there is an episode on tonight, actually. If you live in Manhattan and you have cable television, which probably is not most of these people, and they're not watching it live anyway. But if you are, then you can watch it live on television tonight at 11 o'clock.
Well, you
can watch it every Wednesday night at 11 o'clock.
Let's start there. Yeah, tell me about the show, how it started, and sort of where it's at now. How did you first come about being a television host?
That's an excellent question. So in a previous life,
I'm a good interviewer. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're great. It's like you've done this before, Randy. Yeah. I feel like you have some experience with this somehow.
Yes.
So I used to work at The Daily Show back in the Jon Stewart days. I guess he's back. So it's the Jon Stewart days again. But like when he was the full-time host. Yeah, when he was the full-time host. I worked there for 5 years. It was like the January 2005 to December 2009, right? So wow. it sounds like 4 years, but really because it was all of 2005 and all of 2009, it was 5. Anyway, so I started there as the tape librarian, and then as time went on, I was an associate segment producer, and I did, in studio segments with John, with some of the correspondents, whatever, right? And I know this sounds silly. I was like in a writer's meeting one day, and I was just like, if these idiots can do it, then anyone can do it. And, I come from like a DIY background where I grew up and, putting on gigs or whatever. I didn't grow up putting on gigs, but like in college, I put on gigs and played in bands and, I did all that stuff. And I was like, well, what is the DIY equivalent of television? I was like, well, it's cable access TV, and this is something, I'm not making this up. This is something that's existed for a long time. There's a long history of cable access television shows. And I was like, what if I explored that? What if I made my own show? Like, it seems like something I could do, like anything, right? You're just like when I started my record label, right? I was like, well, what do you need to do to put out a record? Well, you need an artist and you need a recording, and it's like you just go through the steps. Like, what do I need to do this thing? And so that's kind of what I did for the TV show.
And if you knew all the stuff about it, you probably wouldn't have done it. You're naive enough to know, like, well, this can't be that hard. And then you start doing it, and then you're like, oh, well, there's a lot. But do you think, is that true? I mean, that's sort of, I guess that's the cliche. If I knew everything about, you were naive enough to think it's doable, and so you start doing it. But now, having done it for so long, do you think if you would have gone back and known everything you know now, would you still have done it?
Well, this is what I like to say about life in general, right, mm-hmm. Randy? It's like some people say they regret nothing. I regret it all. So
good.
That's what I say. I would do everything differently.
Sure.
It's like, what would you do differently? I'm like, every fucking thing, right? If I could do it all differently, I would. I don't know where that would lead me. No, the truth is, Randy, I wish that I'd started it earlier.
Oh.
If I'm being honest.
Okay.
I wish that, like, when I'd first moved to New York, when I was 21 years old, that I had immediately gone into BCAT and started making a show, because I feel like there were so many like artists and bands that didn't really get documented from that time, from like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
There really isn't anything of them. And that, I was at all those shows,
mm-hmm.
Like I saw the Strokes open for the Hot Snakes, right? Like I remember that was, right? Like I remember the Strokes as an opener. I walked in when the White Stripes played at Mercury Lounge. I like bought a ticket at the door that night. It wasn't even sold out in advance. And the first opener that night was the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, So it's like, I feel like I was in that scene and I missed out on documenting all the stuff that really wasn't ever documented.
Did anybody meet you in the bathroom?
I feel like I could have been interviewed for that book,
Right.
So I'll tell you this though. Like I knew Karen like a little bit, you know what I mean? Like I'd met her a couple times. And one day the phone rang, my landline. This was before I had a cell phone. My landline rang, and it was Karen calling to ask me if I wanted to maybe play synthesizer in this new band she was starting up. And I was like, cool.
Yeah.
I was like, cool. But then like whatever. I never heard from her again. I never went anywhere, but I think that band ended up being the AAS.
Oh my God. Wild. Okay. But hold on. Let's hold on to I want to hold on to public access, and then we'll kind of work backwards from there. The public access. I mean, obviously anybody that's listening to this show is a white man in their 40s, but I would imagine that seems to be what
your audience is what you're saying.
But, and if you're not, I apologize. I hope I didn't other anyone here, but I've learned this over. I think this was the thing I was afraid of when I started the show. Like, oh no, I'm just going to have people just like me listening. And then people wrote in, they're like, I'm just like you. This is great. I'm like, oh, okay. The weakness became the strength. But public access, I mean, this is Wayne's World. This is, there's a whole oddball thing, but specifically New York public access. I mean, did you grow up in the New York area? How close were you watching this public access show growing up, or what was?
No, not at all. Okay. I mean, I grew up in Thousand Oaks, California.
Okay. Got it.
And I moved to New York in 1999.
Gotcha. And so public access for out here in Southern California, so I can relate to that. It was like Wally George. I remember it was like Channel 56, KCET was sort of our like, loose sort of public address thing. But did you know Wally George, or did you watch Wally George?
No.
He was kind of the Rush Limbaugh or the Fox News or Morton Downey Jr. sort of before all that stuff. He like had a bad comb over. He's basically Trump, before Trump, and had the bad comb over and a big American flag, and he would just argue with the audience. But his daughter ended up becoming Rebecca De Mornay. She had changed her name. She became an actress. He was just this old kind of guy that kind of just shriveled into more of a prune face and just yelled at the audience with a big American flag behind it and told everybody to shut up. That was the public access I knew. And then, but where did you know public access, or how did you sort of, what were you bringing into it, I guess? How did you foresee this public show going, public access?
TV Party, I think, would probably be the biggest influence for me, you know, in terms of like the idea of getting started. Like I watched the TV Party documentary, and I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool.
I don't know a lot about TV Party. What was it?
Oh, TV Party was like a cable access show that happened in the late 70s, early 80s. Glenn O'Brien from Interview Magazine, he was just like a man about town who started the show. He was the host, along with Chris from Blondie.
Oh,
the guitar player from Blondie was his co-host.
Whoa.
And so Debbie Harry was like there. Chris Stein. Right?
Yeah.
Chris Stein from Blondie. Yeah. So he was the co-host. So, Debbie Harry was there at every taping.
And was this at that
Glenn
same
O'Brien was
public access station where you tape?
It's like the same kind of thing. It's not the same studio.
Okay.
I think it's like the lineage is the same, but yeah, it was Manhattan Cable Access.
Got it.
But Glenn O'Brien was just like, oh, there's this really cool graffiti artist. I'm going to have him on the show and have him do like write weird shit on the screen. And that was Basquiat, before he was a famous artist. When he was like a teenager just doing graffiti, Glenn O'Brien found him, was like, let's have him on the show. And so Glenn would have a lot of people like that. The only drawback with TV Party was, for some reason, they couldn't have live bands perform in the studio, really. So they had like kind of like a stripped down kind of house band that would play sometimes, but they couldn't have like, they interviewed the Clash, but the Clash didn't play. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So there's like I know there's some footage of like David Byrne doing some like special kind of performance, but the Talking Heads didn't play.
Got it.
Whereas I think he could have gotten those bands to perform in another venue. He wasn't able to. He just wasn't allowed to do live music in the studio. So it was mostly interviews and sketches, but everyone on the show was like, super cool and famous and in the New York scene or whatever.
Wild. So start documenting the time and what was going on around him and pulling people into the studio. It reminds me a lot of like college radio. I mean, this was a thing, in the 90s that I remember growing up, and you'd hear about like, oh, so-and-so band did this special set, or we had KSPC, K-Space at the Claremont colleges where I grew up, and I could get that in on a clear day. And then KXLU was the big one at Loyola Marymount inside, LA, and you'd hear about, Beck came down and did a performance in studio, or Thurston Moore, or these, kind of like wild things. So what happens? How do you get the show? How do you do it?
I mean, anybody who lives in, I mean, East Borough actually has its own network, right? So when I was living in Brooklyn, it was BCAT at the time. I went down to BCAT and you sign up for their classes. They have like an orientation you take, and then they have like, they train you to use the equipment, and then they kind of throw you in the deep end. They're like, all right, make a show. And so I did all that. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do all this. So I jumped through all the hoops and I learned how to use the gear.
And this is while you're working at the Daily Show? So your daytime Daily Show?
I'd left the Daily Show, right? I'd left the Daily Show. I had the idea while I was there. Okay. And I think it would have been difficult for me to do it while I was working there, just because, like, you know, you get a lot of time off when you're working at a place like that because there are a lot of production breaks, but you don't really get to choose when it is, you know? And so, like, I had more flexibility, and I've had more flexibility over the years to be able to do my show because my schedule hasn't been quite so rigid in that way. So I went in, and like, it was like myself and Weasel Walter and Tim Dahl, and like, you know, it was basically like my friends. We went in and we did essentially a live show. You know, it didn't air live, but we recorded live. We had 3 hours to record whatever we did. And I mean, it was a total fucking disaster, right? Like, everything you could imagine going wrong went wrong. And I remember we went back to Tim's place afterwards to look at the footage, and everyone's like, oh, you were really going to have some editing to do. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, this is it.
That was
like,
the show.
There's nothing. That's the show. There isn't really
3 hours.
There's nothing to edit. Like, you know, it was like a half-hour slot. I recorded like 40 minutes of footage to fill like a half-hour slot. You know what I mean?
I see.
So like,
okay, so you did have some.
There was like there was a little bit here to cut, but I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I could edit to this and edit to that. It was just like, no, this is the show. And what's funny is Kevin Shea, who, you know, I used to play in a band with, and is still a great friend of mine. Has been a good friend for many years. So you know Kevin.
Yeah, sure.
He did like a 15-minute drum solo, you know, and that I think people have really responded to still, even now. Like, I think it was sometime last year, I want to say, like, some Twitch streamer did a bit on like cable access shows, and one of the shows he covered was mine. And so all of a sudden, this episode of my show from like 15 years ago starts getting all these comments from people who watch this Twitch streamer, right? Wow. They're like, oh, this is amazing. We love this. And it's funny because for me, that's like by far the most primitive episode that I did.
The first one.
You know? So it's funny. That's the first one. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Of course, I thought I knew everything, right? It's like one of those things you go into it. You're like, oh, I worked on a professional television show. We won Emmys every year. I know what the fuck I'm doing. But then you get in there and you realize you don't know shit. You know what I mean? It's like, great. I have no idea what I'm doing. I thought I knew, but whatever I did, you know, I was working with a group of professionals who all knew what they were doing. And that kind of makes it easier than when you...
Do they come with the studio? Like when you get the time, like, do you get a crew, or how does that, or did you hire a crew?
You have to put your own crew together.
Okay.
And so for that one, I did get a couple of the studio people to come. I mean, not that they didn't every time, but for that time I got a few of them.
Okay.
But I mean, even those, like, you know, they're not necessarily expert in what they're doing either. You know what I mean?
Okay. Everyone's
so there were like audio issues. Yeah. There were all sorts of issues with it, right? But whatever, it was like it existed, and I was able to look at it. I was like, okay, this is the pilot for my show, and now I can see what I did wrong, which is thinking that I can get a whole show in one taping. You know what I mean? And so after that, I was like, well, what if I brought in different acts individually, and then I edited that all together later? And then that will give me more flexibility, and then I don't have to try to like jam an entire show into one taping, because I did a live show once, like an hour live show where I had like 18 different bands. Like there was two studios, like switching back and forth between Studio 1 and Studio 2. And I mean, again, everyone was there, had a blast, except for me. I was miserable. It was like my 38th birthday or something. Oh, no. It was like my 36th. It was like my birthday party. I was like, for my birthday party, I'm going to invite all my friends and do a live show. But I haven't done it since, and I really have no interest in it. I did it once. I did one.
Yeah. But again, and I think you hit on it, you know, even with the Twitch stream, you know, comment. But I mean, public access was sort of YouTube before YouTube. It was this user generated content. It was the proto sort of, you know, just anybody can make something, which is, you know, the great, you know, leveler, you know, of democratic media in some ways. And it's also the giant trash heap that is the current culture we live in some ways, you know, where any asshole with a microphone can make a podcast.
a la this one, but, and everybody's, encouraged, or at least, if by listening to media or consuming, contemporary media, you're like, well, I could have a YouTube channel, or I could do this, or if you're so minded and wired that sort of way. But the public access was sort of the thing that came before all that. Is that right? Or how, from your perspective, how do you sort of see what public access was in those early aughts, sort of media pre-digital streaming world to now? What have you reflected on?
I see a direct line.
Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube, I think, is the modern version of cable access, right? Mm-hmm. Cable access started in the 70s. It was a very different time, right? So it was when the cable companies were first starting to lay all the cable. Mm-hmm. And the FCC said, you know what? Television can't just be for wealthy people. You have to allow anybody who wants to make their own TV show to make their own TV show. So the cable companies still to this day, like MNN, the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, where I film my show, they get their money from Verizon, from Spectrum, from the cable companies. That's where the bulk of their funding comes from, still to this day. And so it's always been that idea that anyone can go in and make their own show. And that's what it exists to do. And now, of course, everyone has a camera on their phone and you can upload it to YouTube. It's so much easier to do that than it was in the 70s or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that certainly, I think, is the precursor to it. And a lot of the people now who are content creators, in the past, they might have had their own cable access TV show. Like that would have been a similar outlet for them. Mm-hmm. And, I love cable access TV. I'll tell you, I'll tell you about the show. I moved to Manhattan, right? I started off in Brooklyn, and then I moved to Manhattan, and I started doing my show at the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And, I was using, it was the studio that you came when Ratfist came and played the show.
Yeah.
It was great. That tiny little studio upstairs was like the only studio I could use when I first started working there. And I remember I came out of a taping there, and this woman, Lydia, came up to me and she said, I'm trying to get certified to use that studio. Do you think I could help you with your show sometime? My show's on tonight. You should watch it. I was like, all right. I was like, let me check this out. And so I go home and I turn on the TV, and her show, like most shows at the time on MNN, it was a live show where she took calls. And her show was called Crooked Doctors. And it was about how she had been wrongfully expelled from medical school.
Whoa.
And the story was that she was wrongfully expelled from medical school in her mind. And somehow, in trying to prove her innocence, she ended up in jail.
Okay.
Prison. No, she ended up in prison, not in jail.
Crime thing. Yeah.
This is like a true crime story. She ended up in prison for harassment. I think she was harassing the judge.
Oh, Lord.
And she was out of prison, having served her sentence, and had gone to MNN to start a show about how she was wrongfully expelled from medical school. And she had secret footage. She was shooting at the courthouse and stuff. And she had all these crazy allegations, and it was totally unhinged. Right. Uh-huh. But where else would someone like that be given the opportunity to make their own show? It was scary. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is real. This is some real outsider shit here that's going on.
Was there an air of mental illness on her behalf?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, that was clear. So okay. I avoided her after that. Mm-hmm. I saw her a couple of times, but I avoided her. She eventually got barred from the studio for erratic behavior. For which makes sense given the whole story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just to me, I'll never forget that experience. I was like, this person is unhinged, and she has a voice, right? Yeah. She could go on and she could talk about, and people would call her and she would talk to them, and that was a lot of the shows were just live call-in shows where they would just take calls from whoever was watching and they would talk about whatever their topic was.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now they don't do that. They don't really do live shows anymore. It's kind of changed. They moved to a new studio. Things are a little bit different there now.
Okay.
But
I imagine they have to evolve with the time, just like, everything else does now that social media exists, and, there's a whole other, I'm sure their lane is more defined as arts and entertainment, or is there, how does it, do they try to put a cultural sort of weight to this proposition of public media, or no? It can be anything.
It's still the same, right? Okay. If you live in Manhattan, Randy, and you want to have a cable access TV show, you can go, and they're not going to tell you what kind of show you have. I know there's someone, they live in a senior center, and they go in and they read the menu. That's their show. They read the menu for the senior center.
Wow.
for that week.
Oh, okay. So
and
there
that's
really
what they
is
do.
is there a long wait to this? I mean, how does it work? I mean, are you put on a wait list and when someone dies or when someone quits or doesn't show up for enough shows and you get added to it? Or, I mean,
It's not like that. I think they're always kind of looking for stuff because people come and go.
Okay.
The real issue is booking the studio because there isn't a lot of studio availability.
Okay.
There are more producers who are trying to book the studio than there is studio space available for them to book.
Got it.
So that's more the issue is more the studio space. So I mean, you could make your show, and some people do. You could put Hyphenate on the air. You know what I mean?
Shoot it at
like
home,
you don't necessarily have to
film and then add it there. Okay.
Exactly. And people do that. There was a show where someone had some stuffed animals and they would play records and the stuffed animals would dance to the records. And then they would just film that for a half hour. And then, you used to have to deliver a DV tape or whatever. Like that was how you delivered your show.
Yeah.
So people would come in and they'd shoot a DV tape at home and they'd deliver the DV tape.
Unhinged.
Right?
But now you just email MP4 or whatever version that they need.
Yeah. They have a website where you have to go and you upload it or whatever.
That is
I'll tell you, Tony Conrad used to have a cable access show where he would help kids with their homework.
Wow. That sounds like the nicest normal thing Tony Conrad ever did. That I was expecting.
He used to have a show where if you were a kid and needed help with your homework, you could call in and he would help you with your homework. I love that. Yeah. Tony Conrad's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, as an early kind of video artist and sort of agitator, he's at I'm just wrapping my head around this whole thing. It's interesting that that it continues to exist, but I guess it's all about the thing, right? It's existential in a way of if somebody makes a public access show in the forest, does it make a sound? Like whose watches it is sort of where I don't know. The pavement meets.
Truthfully, I have no idea who's watching. They don't have any way of measuring who's watching it on television. You know what I mean?
That's not what it's about.
I sometimes check into the stream. The stream works sometimes it doesn't. I think for most people, it's about the process of making it, and a lot of the public that they serve. It's like they have facilities, right? They have edit stations. A lot of people who use MNN or or Brick now or whatever, they don't have a laptop at home that they can use to edit. And so for them, it's access. It is access to things that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. And you can post it on YouTube, and people, I post my show on YouTube, obviously, but
that's what I was going to get at. Yeah. So I mean, you own the content, and you can post it wherever you want to, and it's yours to own. That's great. It sounds amazing, like free studio space. I feel like LA would it's I don't know what would happen in LA. I don't know how it works here. I mean, maybe it does exist and I don't know it, but I just imagine there's so many. But yeah, we can't have more crazies than Manhattan. There's no way that's possible.
I don't know how to measure. How would you even measure that, Randy? How would you measure? It's not just how many.
Public health.
It's not even how many. It's
health. The severity.
That's a difficult thing to measure.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure.
This is a long-term project I can work on with researchers at the Pew Foundation. We'll figure out how many crazy.
This could be your PhD in sociology.
Measuring mental health through public access or streaming media via location timing. Okay, I like it. There we go.
I'll get you in touch with Lydia if you want.
Thank you. Yes, I think case number 1. So you started when? You started, this is mid-aughts? When does the first show go live?
2010.
2010. Oh, wow.
So this actually, we're about to celebrate 15 years
Holy
of
shit.
the BJ Rubin Show.
That's amazing.
In a couple weeks, it's 15 years.
And how many? And it's 15 seasons. Do you do like seasons? You have how many shows, or no? It's ongoing. It's whenever you can. It's sporadic at your whim.
So I'm finished. Season 5 is finishing right now, and it's just kind of been things have grouped together in a certain way. Season 1, I kind of see it as there were kind of 2 halves. The first half I shot in Brooklyn, and then when I moved to Manhattan, the second half was in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And then Manhattan did some renovations, and they upgraded the facilities to HD. So that's kind of the break. The first season is in standard definition. And then the second season, that's when you came in. When Ratfist came in, it was season 2. And so that was season 2 of the show. Okay. And then I kind of took season 2, I had a finale, and then I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then my friend from Texas was like, BJ, I'm coming to town with my band. You should book us on your show. And I was like, I guess I should. And so that was kind of how season 3 started. And then, it's just like, and then season 3, it came to it. Yeah, this is the way I think about it, right? It's like if you're a carpenter, right? You're working with wood. Wood kind of has like a grain and a way that it wants to be cut, right? And I feel the same, like anything I'm making, I feel like is like that. There's like a way that it wants to be cut, and I just kind of try to cut with the grain. If that like makes sense, if that's a good like analogy,
sure.
And so it's not like I'm thinking like, oh, like this is gonna be it. I'm just like, it's more like a feeling I get. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm an artist. You're an artist. You know, whenever you're creating anything, it's like, how do you know when an album is done?
Yeah, sometimes it never is.
Sometimes it never is. And it's like the second you say it's done, you want to fix something. There's something you want to change. You're like, oh, I should have done this differently. Or, it's like that with anything you're making.
Yeah.
So this is season 5. I started shooting in earnest. Xyloris White was the first guest. And it was funny because I tried to book them like 10 years before. I'd gone to a couple of their gigs. I was talking to someone from their label, and then I just like communication stopped, and I was like, whatever. You know what? That kind of thing happens all the time. I'm sure you're familiar with it, right? And then I was trying to book, I saw that Callie Malone was coming to town. I don't know if you know Callie. She's like a minimalist composer. She's an American. She lives in Sweden. And, her booking agent also books Reese Chatham. Who I'd had on my show. So I'd worked with her when I got Reese on the show, right? And so I saw Callie's coming to town. I was like, hey, Regina, what do you think? Can we get Callie to do the show? And she was like, I don't think it's going to work out for Callie, but what about Xyloris White? And it was just so funny because I tried so hard to book Xyloris White 10 years before. And so I was like, obviously this is kismet or whatever. I was like, sure, let's do it. And when they came, like Jim White, the drummer, he was like, we changed labels. Like that's what happened. That's why like the ball got dropped, because you were dealing with our old label, and then we switched over to Drag City, and then that was kind of the end. And I was like, I get it.
There you go. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was kind of like I was helping my buddy Owen Klein. He's a director. He did that Funny Pages movie a couple of years ago. He got back from con and was like, BJ, we got to make a TV show together. And I was like, all right. And so we shot a couple scenes for that. And then it just kind of like, it didn't, I don't know, it kind of fizzled as these things do. But I kind of gotten the taste for being back in the studio again after COVID. And I was like, let's start doing something. And that was how I reached out to, Regina about Callie, and then Xyloris White came. And then, it's just like this whole thing you get sucked into, and all of a sudden I'm like shooting Heavenly and Letitia Sadier, and I'm May Simonis. May Simonis was the guest that everyone who watches the show this season's like, I love May Simonis. And I was like, you know what? May was such a pleasure to have on the show. She was so professional. Her band showed up early. They were there early, which is not, it's not my normal experience when I'm working with artists that they show up early.
Yeah.
So they showed up early. They knew they were ready to go from the second they got there too. It was such a pleasure to work with them. And it's funny because I shot her scenes like, a year and a half ago. And since then she's become significantly more famous or successful. I don't know how you want to say it,
sure.
But she went from being an opener to being a headliner, right? She was opening shows at Music Hall Williamsburg. Now she's headlining shows there, right?
Yeah. And
so it's funny to see like an artist make that transition in the time where I'm like editing.
Just hold on. You can see your viewer count going up before the episode's even done.
I wish it didn't. Yeah. It doesn't always work out that way. You think it would, but anyway, it's still like it was a nice document of her to have her come do the show, and it was nice that I got to do that stuff. And again, it was just because I wasn't planning on doing it. I wasn't sure. I feel like every time I finish a season of the show, I'm like, I don't know what the future of the show is. We all have these existential crises. Like, what am I going to do? Because that Xyloris White taping was like 2 years ago. And I feel like for the last 2 years, I've really invested a significant amount of time and energy and money and my life into this. And I'm just like, it takes so much to make it happen because there's just so many elements, just like post-production audio. Like that has been bogging me down. I've become really obsessed with like clicks, with essing, things that I never really even thought about before. And it's hard to hire someone to go through and pull out all the clicks because there's just so many of them. You can automate it, but that's not enough for me. If I hear a click, I'm like, fuck me, I suck, I hate it. And so I spend hours and hours and hours laboriously like pulling those things, I'm like an audition, like, oh, let's auto heal that click. Okay, where's the next one? A couple seconds later. And so it's just like, I get so sucked into these things because if I don't do those things, I hate it. You know what I mean? I'm just like, it's not like I like it a little bit less. It's like I fucking hate it. I feel like a failure. If there's there's like, if there's any kind of mouth noise at all, I'm like, I suck.
That's hilarious. So. Well, don't listen to
this podcast. It's just so laborious.
This podcast will be
What's that?
Don't listen to this podcast. This podcast will be full of S's and clicks and everything. It's an audio only medium and I don't give a fuck.
No, it's funny for like a visual medium. Like I spend more time on the audio, I think, than the visual.
That's hilarious.
Because I think like, and if you watch a movie, I mean, honestly, you'll notice bad sound before you notice bad video. Like anything like that. I feel like the sound is the most important part, even though you think of it as a visual medium. I mean, video is an audio medium as well.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, I love calling out ADR. I've been really into the Rockford Files recently, over the last 6 months.
Okay.
I've been watching old Rockford Files, which is late 70s, mid to late 70s James Garner show, and it's great because you could just hear when they cut to ADR. They're in a car. It's everything's on location, which is my favorite thing. Because you just see old LA from the 70s, and just all the old area. Like, wait, is that Hollywood? Is that this? Like I know I'm always looking for street signs and places because you can see where all the payphones are. Anyway. It's a archive show now at this point, but the ADR, whenever they do it, someone looks away from camera and then a very clear audio goes, oh boy, I think we have to go over to Malibu now. That didn't sound like that. The audio didn't sound that way before. They didn't care.
It's hard for me to watch stuff like that. To be honest, it's hard for me to watch old movies sometimes, even though like there's something about them that I love.
Have you seen
the sound?
Have you seen Madam Web?
Sound drives me crazy.
Did you watch Madam Web? The Dakota?
I did not watch Madam Web.
It's all bad sound. The entire movie's bad sound. They did the villain dirty. I think he has like some kind of vaguely Latin American accent, and I don't know who the actor is. I apologize for not knowing what his natural accent is, but whatever voice he's doing is just horrendous. It's worse than Bane, kind of accent, and it's all recorded in a very like dead room. No matter where he is, the character on screen his voice just always sounds the same, and like just I must kill these girls. They know my secrets. it's almost Godzilla like bad. Anyway,
sure.
So I guess this goes to say too.
No, for me before we move away from that, what I do want to say is for me, the old ADR, it's like when people get punched, it just sounds like it's so exaggerated, and the gunfire. For me, I'm just like, how is this what people thought the punches or gunfire sounded like? It sounds so artificial.
Well, Indiana Jones, I think, is my favorite, where the punches do sound like gunfire. That Indiana Jones Ben Burtt punch is great. It feels huge. No, you know what? We're watching Stranger Things now with my 12-year-old, and we went back from the beginning. We're watching it all, and I was like, do you hear the sound of the flashlights? Like, did you know in real life flashlights don't actually sound like metal scraping, like two swords scraping against each other? Whoosh, whoosh. If you put a flashlight in a smoky room, it makes no sound. But you wouldn't know that if you were watching Stranger Things, because every time a flashlight goes across a smoky room, it sounds like two blades just scraping against each other, creating tension. But flashlights don't actually make sound in real life. We should try it sometime. It's a scientific experiment.
But that's the magic of showbiz, of movies or whatever.
Jaws 4, The Revenge, has the shark jumping out of the water, and I think it's a slowed down lion or a slowed down gorilla sound, just makes a giant roar. The sharks are known for the vocalization. Fish, if you ever had fish, they make a lot of vocal guttural sounds, and the bigger they are, the lower they are. There's no such thing as a shark roar, but there's a huge shark roar before it. It's impaled by the front of a ship. The mast of a ship goes through, and then it explodes. They're filled with explosive sharks. Everyone knows are filled with explosives, and they make big roaring sounds. According to
that's what Michael Caine said that he did for the money. Like he was like, I have a beautiful house.
He remodeled his bathroom, I think, for that one. Yeah.
Whatever it was. Yeah. I don't think I haven't seen that one, unfortunately.
Do yourself a favor this holiday season if you have a minute and watch Jaws 4, The Revenge.
You have a mic on the shark behind you.
I do. Yeah. That's my co-host. Yeah. I'll ADR him in now. That's a happy accident. Yeah, that does work. He's my Andy Richter.
That's great.
So obviously this goes without saying, but public access TV does not pay. And how does this all work? As an artist, as an independent artist, as an independent producer, making stuff for your own satisfaction, and then obviously having to have a day job. Like, how do you balance these things, or what else are you doing? How do you sort of talk about this world of stuff that you do? And how does that
so
make sense?
I've worked at the UN, the United Nations, for the last 13 years, and that's been my day job. I mean, there was a couple years where I was kind of trying to figure stuff out between the Daily Show when I started at the UN. But, I've worked at the UN since 2012, and I've worked in a variety of different roles there. But what's nice about the UN is I get 6 weeks off a year, and the schedule tends to be fairly flexible. So, if I need to take a Tuesday off to bring Letitia Sadier into the studio, then I can take Tuesday off and go to the studio or whatever it is, And so that's really been nice that I've had a lot of flexibility. Plus, I want to feel like I'm doing something positive with my life, you know what I mean? And not just like working in some office to make some asshole more money or whatever. And, so I've been lucky enough that I've had a career at the UN for the last 13 years. And so I've done a lot of different stuff there, but, I have gotten to do some video stuff at the UN. And honestly, that's been some of the most rewarding stuff I've done. I worked with the Remember Slavery program for a couple of years, where we did a lot of outreach about the transatlantic slave trade, which was a really rewarding experience for me. I also, at the same time, I was working with the Holocaust Remembrance Program. So I was working with Holocaust survivors. And this is international.
This is documenting people's stories, or what? Tell me about these programs. I'm not familiar with them.
So the Remember Slavery program, I mean, one thing we did, so there was an International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery, the transatlantic slave trade. That was kind of like our big thing, you know what I mean? And so I joined the team in 2019. So our first International Day would have been in 2020, which was canceled. So we started doing some virtual events. We did it in 2021 and 2022. We just, I brought some ambassadors into the TV studio, and we had partners who would give us videos, and I kind of stitched it all together, and I remember there was a group in Haiti who were sending us some videos, and whatever they sent me was kind of like low quality. So I had to call them on the phone, at like whatever time it was, and like try to tell them what I needed. And then they shot something special just for me. And it was much better than what they'd sent me originally, And so it really depended. There was like a youth video conference where young people from different parts of the world would submit videos, and then we would watch the videos together and talk about them. And I remember there was a group of young school children from Jamaica who made this video. It was like a poem they wrote about, it was like a fantasy of being like an enslaved person on a slave ship and like rising up to kill the captain of the ship, the slave owner.
Holy shit.
And so, I'm captioning this stuff, right? Because I'm trying to make it accessible for everybody who's watching it. And so I really had to listen closely to that poem, and it was a powerful poem that they had written. And I felt, I was happy to be able to amplify their signal or whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To help them tell their story. All these people who, I learned a lot about the transatlantic slave trade that I didn't know as a result of working with this program. And I feel like that's been a big growth. That was a big source of growth for me, And so I like working at the UN. I've gotten to do so many interesting things. I've gotten to work with so many different people from all over the world that I never would have been able to meet otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I remember right when I first started, one of my colleagues came up to me. She's like, BJ, guess where I'm from? And I was like, I have no idea. There's no way I'm going to guess. Deepwo was her name, right? And she was like, I'm from Lesotho. And I was just like, what's a Lesotho? But now I know it's a small little country inside of South Africa. And they have a really beautiful type of music from there called Famo music, which I'm now a fan of, something I'd never been exposed to before. And so I feel like that, it really opened me up to being exposed to different cultures in a way that I never could have even possibly imagined. And when I first started working, I was working in the Department of Political Affairs, which is like the diplomatic wing. So it's sort of like the foreign ministry. So I was working with a bunch of diplomats from all over the world. And I was working in the Africa 1 division. So a lot of my colleagues were African. They were diplomats from Africa. In fact, I was able to interview my director on the show. He was Nigerian. And he came on my show and he talked about working on the elections in South Africa with Nelson Mandela, when he was young, when he was new to being a diplomat. That was one of his first assignments.
Wild.
And so I just like, I've gotten the opportunity to work with a lot of really interesting people, and it's really informed my work as an artist in a way that I never would have expected, just because like now I feel like I'm I have much broader interests, and I just like have a greater awareness of the world and different cultures than I ever had before. And so it's been rewarding. I mean, I think I mentioned briefly, but while we were setting up, Jane Goodall is someone I got to work with. I had a conversation with her the way I'm talking to you now. I mean, it was a tech call because she was going to be on a live online event, but still it was like, I got to work with Jane Goodall and I had a private conversation with her, Yo-Yo Ma was on that line too. It's like, so I've really gotten the opportunity to do a lot of really exciting, interesting stuff that I think my show is like everything I do, I think has grown as a result of this experience. And it allowed me to, live in New York. And, it costs, I pay people to help me with the show, and I give my guests a little something for gas or whatever. Sometimes I take them out for dinner if I can. And so it's allowed me to do all those things without worrying about having an income. Because I feel like a lot of these things you got to worry about. When you worry about money, it really diminishes what you're able to do. I think you're able to do a lot more when you're like, this is for free. Like, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, we don't need to worry about contracts or whatever. We don't need to worry about that stuff because you're not trying to profit from it. We respect that. We appreciate that. And we want to be a part of it. And so I feel like it's really given me the freedom to do more than I would have otherwise if I were trying to like monetize it in some way. Plus, having all these musical guests come on and play their music. I mean, I don't even want to think about what the rights issues would be if I was trying to release it commercially. I have thought about that because I've thought about doing like a Blu-ray or something. And I'm like, I don't even know how I would do that,
Yeah, that's one of those interesting things too. There's some shows. I think the Muppet Show was for a lot of years, unstreamable because again, all the music artists that are there, or even I think the young ones, anything where you have a live band playing is, especially those 70s and 80s. It was just like, okay, well, they would
WKRP in Cincinnati was famously one of those.
That's it, right? Yeah. So it's it. So yeah. So the BJ Rubin show is not a commercial endeavor. You don't sell ad space. It's not, there's a way of, I guess that I was thinking about that too, when you were talking about, just YouTube versus public access. Like YouTube is, it's a platform and they have their own advertisements. And then you see this content creator sort of world where they can sell ad space within their video. And they say it's brought to you by Man Box, shave your nuts and be cool. And you get paid $500, whatever. This show is not sponsored by Man Nuts. But
not yet,
but yeah, but we are sponsored by DistroKid, I think is our one thing. And, for better or worse, cool. Whatever that is, and that comes through our ruinous media network partners and like, cool. All right. It helps. It's not keeping the lights on, but it's, but it's something to help. But yeah, I mean, I think the public access world, and it sort of seems like, like you said, you're able to do it without really worrying about that. And that must make a huge difference.
I think it does. I mean, I thought about it, and I actually have made a few ads for local businesses, but it's like Academy Records on 18th Street. It's like one of my favorite places to go buy CDs in New York, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, let me make an ad for you guys. Like, I'll produce it. You guys don't need to. You guys just need to let me shoot it, and that'll be fun. And they were like, okay, you know what we want to do? We want to bring in some of our favorite customers and have you like interview them a little bit. And these are people who are not normally on TV, right? So I love that. I love that.
Ad versus content is, it's almost the same sort of thing. Like those might be people you'd want to interview anyway, or that's
what I'm saying. And I was the last person. It's like people were like some of their regular customers came in and they talked about what they like about Academy, right? And so I was the last regular customer, right? Because I mean, it's my show and I am a regular customer there. So I thought it would make sense to have me talk. And I said it's my favorite place in New York to buy used CDs, which is I like Book Off too. Anyway, I don't know if you have a lot of CD heads watching your show. I'm a CD. You can tell I'm a CD head. This is a small selection of my CD collection, and unfortunately, there aren't a lot of places in New York to buy CDs.
Really, it's gone away. The CD trade is not happening. It's not going off.
I
thrift
think
stores. I guess thrift stores probably aren't really a big. It's a more suburban sort of reach.
There are thrift stores and they will sometimes have like a small selection of CDs, but it's not, it used to be much better, like 10, 15 years ago. Like you could go to any thrift store in the city and it was just like packed with CDs. That was a great time because everyone was getting rid of their CDs and they didn't know what to do with them. So they just give them. Housing Works is the big thrift store in New York. They have them all over town. And so I would go to like every Housing Works, right? And CDs were $1. And so I was just like, cool, let's do that. Let's do that.
You were in on the bottom floor.
That's what I'm saying. And I feel like, now from what I don't know, Mike Sniper, I'm guessing like he's been talking about. Mike Sniper runs Capture Tracks.
Oh, okay.
And so we used to work together at Midnight Records. We used to work at a record store together like 20 years ago or whatever. They got raided by the feds for selling bootlegs. That's true. And so that was not a good time in my life. That was not fun.
Could you imagine
dealing with with the postal police?
Oh God.
Yeah.
For selling bootlegs of bootleg records, like records that somebody didn't have the right to. Like you like live taped a Rolling Stones concert in the 80s, and
I mean we didn't tape it, but someone did.
Yeah,
we were selling
you were
CDs
selling
of
it. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's
exactly what we.
That's got to be such a low rung. That's like almost like FBI, like the FBI warning on the front of VHSs or something. Like, somebody coming after you. Oh, we're busting you for charging $5 for watching Peter Pan or something. Like,
No, that's exactly what happened.
It's a federal crime. Wow.
Yeah. So Mike and I, who runs Capture Tracks, used to work there together. And he's been talking recently because he has a record store in New York, and he just has expanded his CD section. And what he was talking about was that the young people, like the teenagers who are coming in to buy music, a lot of them are buying CDs because they're tired of streaming. They're tired of the algorithm. Records are too expensive and they take too long to manufacture. And so they're coming in and they're buying CDs. And I'm like, finally, people are coming around because I've been hardcore collecting CDs for like the last 15 years,
Yeah.
I used to be a very serious vinyl collector. And then one day, like this light bulb went off. I was like, fuck vinyl, fuck that shit. I like CDs. I'm a CD man through and through. And I've just like, there are a lot of reasons why I love CDs. They sound great. They're easy to listen to. They're easy to store. I mean, there's so many advantages to CDs, I think, over vinyl.
What's the lifespan of a CD? Do you get disc rot? How many years?
I think the disc rot is overstated.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to say that I've never had a CD that I had issue playing, but the truth is a lot of the earliest CDs have like a Target label on them. That's how you can tell. It's like that's kind of like the early edition, like they only did that for the first few years when CDs were around. And I have a bunch of Target edition CDs and I haven't had an issue with any of them.
Oh, that's great.
And so it's not to say that disc rot doesn't exist. I think it's actually more of an issue with like DVDs and Blu-rays.
Yeah.
With Laserdiscs, which I also collect. I collect Laserdiscs as well. Well, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of stuff that came out on VHS tape or Laserdisc in the 80s that has never come out anymore.
And extras and deleted scenes and things that they just didn't really, carry over.
Well, I'm more into like music stuff, I have like a Masayoshi Takanaka Laserdisc, right? And I don't know if he's a famous Japanese guitar player. He was in the Sadistic Mika band.
Okay.
Anyway, he's like he's playing, I know he's playing the Brooklyn Paramount sometime soon, next year maybe. Anyway, he's like a super famous guitar player from Japan. I have a Laserdisc of his and anyway, it's like, there's a lot of stuff like that that's never been on DVD. It's never been on Blu-ray, and Laserdisc is a lot better quality than VHS.
Well, that was
so if you're interested,
I remember.
Yeah, that was the whole selling point. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then Laserdisc is really the way to go because it looks way nicer than the VHS tape.
It's interesting though, because that conversation is also so relative to the CRT TVs or the 3-lens projector TVs you'd have at the time. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it's better quality, but what are you playing it on? You know what I mean? Even those TVs had a range of what,
Sure. But I mean, I digitized that stuff, right? Like I have a stack of I digitize it. And so I have stuff that I have on tape and I have on Laserdisc, and I've been able to A/B it. And I'm telling you, the difference is significant. Okay. Laserdisc, I think I'm not saying that all Laserdiscs are better than all DVDs, even though DVD is technically higher resolution, but I think some Laserdiscs are better than some DVDs. It depends on how it's mastered.
Well, I was going to say, the amount of time taken into consideration of the transfer, or if you're transferring from 35, or if you're transferring from negative, or how much cleanup or how much enhancement you do or don't do.
Plus, the audio on a DVD is compressed and it's uncompressed. You have uncompressed audio on a Laserdisc.
Really? Okay. It's amazing. But you had to flip it halfway through, just like a record.
That's why everyone was like, "Oh, fuck this shit! I have to get up and flip it." Jesus Christ! It's like, oh my god, who fucking cares, right?
But also,
I had a Laserdisc. I had a Laserdisc player growing up, right?
Okay.
My mom was like, "We're not getting a VCR. Laserdiscs are much better." There was one place in town where you could rent Laserdiscs. We had HBO, and then we were like, "We're going to cancel HBO, and we're going to get a Laserdisc player, and then we're going to rent Laserdiscs." And so every Saturday we would rent, as a family, we'd go rent a Laserdisc, and my stepfather would make like this peach cobbler, and we had a popcorn maker.
Oh my god!
You know, and we would make popcorn in the popcorn maker and then watch our Laserdiscs.
Look at you guys, and you rode your train around the living room too.
But like we canceled HBO so we could afford to rent.
Got it.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like we canceled HBO so we could afford to rent the Laserdiscs. Amazing. Right? It wasn't like we added it on, and we didn't have a VCR. My mom was like, "We're not even going to get a VCR because, you know, they're not even as nice." She's like, "If we're going to watch a movie, let's watch it on a Laserdisc.
That's incredible.
Get up and flip it."
That's incredible. I mean, the format wars of home video were a real thing. I mean, it's crazy to kind of look at.
You know what Laserdisc used to. It's crazy. I have some old Criterion Collection Laserdiscs, and one of them came with like a order form, because Criterion started as a Laserdisc company, right? When they first started, they started making Laserdiscs, and it was like $50 a disc. You know, so if you were getting Citizen Kane, and there's two different kinds of Laserdiscs, right? One has like an hour on a side, another has a half hour on a side. And the half hour sides are like much better quality even than the 60-minute sides, right?
Sure.
I got really into Laserdiscs a couple of years ago, right? So that 3-disc copy of Citizen Kane was $150.
Yeah. Well, I remember.
And people were paying that.
VHS originally was $150, you know, $120 for, you know, whatever it was. I think E.T. was one of the first big ones that they did a home video thing at like $20, and they just blew it out. You can buy them at McDonald's.
Sure.
You know, the E.T. release was the big, okay, this is for everyone to own. Owning VHS made sense versus that was the whole reason you had rentals. So they were too expensive, you know, but a rental store would go, you know, put in for $1,000 and get, you know, the 10 copies of a thing, and then they could rent it out for whatever, $1 a day and pay it off hopefully by the end of the year.
It was different times we lived in, Randy.
I know. Hey, I lived.
Those were different times.
Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, many a time have I shaken my fist at a cloud and said, you know, curse these 2025s, the times that we live in, not for all the obvious moral good reasons I should be cursing the times, but because we don't have, you know, video stores. I was born to work in a video store, and I worked in video stores for years, and I loved it, and it was so fun, and I thought that was gonna be the rest of my life. Little did I know, if I could have gone back and told that 20-something punk kid, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't working in record stores,
was it Vidiots?
Physical media store is not where it's gonna be. So Vidiots still exists as a nonprofit now here in Eagle Rock.
Yeah,
and they have screenings, and it warms the heart, but it's almost like a LARPing kind of feeling. I think, you know, when I went in there, I was like, oh, this is great. But it's, you know, but in terms of like the hive in the heart of a community, maybe they still are. I don't know. Maybe I live just a little too far out of the bubble. We bought a membership when it first opened just to celebrate and support the thing. Like, this is great. No, I worked at Rocket Video, which was on Melrose and La Brea, which was near where I lived. And it was owned by two Icelandic, you know, media moguls. They were the first people they were the people who started the first private television channel in Iceland. I guess all Iceland was public media, public TV. And then these two geniuses or money launderers or whoever they were allegedly started their own private one. And then they came to America, and then they opened Rocket Video. It's the premier Hollywood sort of, you know, have everything video store. Because Vidiots was over on the west side, and you know, Vidiots was in Santa Monica, and so, you know, there was a lot of places. You know, Eddie Brandt's Saturday Matinee up in the valley. There was a handful of them, and then we'd always be like, well, you could always call Kim's, you know, in New York, and you know, you might have to go somewhere else because we didn't have everything. But there was the other Mondo Video was the one that had like the weird bootlegs, and I think they were making their own like porn in the back room or something. They had like a whole other kind of like nefarious sort of thing on Vermont. So I knew all of the video stores at the time, but Rocket Video was, sorry, I've taken over this interview. I've derailed us into video world, but Rocket
it's your show. It's your show, Randy.
Rocket was cool because people that worked in the industry would come in to do research, you know, and again, it was before everything was online. You'd have to actually get the thing to research it. But then people would also drop off tapes. I remember like someone that worked on the Bob and David Mr. Show thing just brought in the entire, series. And they're like, you can't sell these, you can't do anything with these, you can't even, you can't rent them, but they're just here. Do you guys want them? We're like, sure. And we took them, and they're in the free section. So if you rented something else, that qualified you to take something from the free, no money down, kind of vibe. And so it was just great to have things like that in there. And
but now we have YouTube.
Yeah. Is that better?
And like so much of that stuff is on YouTube.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I feel like the quality is probably comparable. Like a lot of the stuff that's on YouTube is fairly low quality, the same way a lot of those bootleg tapes were pretty low quality.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like, I feel like most things are available.
I miss the curatorial sort of aspect of it. Like I need I don't want an algorithm. I want like a real person's picks, like staff picks for YouTube to go through. I need some kind of like humanistic, sort of artistic, sort of, misanthropic sort of like, person walking me through these things. I follow Red Letter Media on YouTube. Do you know these guys? They're out of Milwaukee. They make like a bad movie sort of channel on YouTube. And I feel like that's about the nature of people I want, just they review shows or they review movies and things. But
sure.
But yeah, that's about as close as I can get. But I think it does call me out on the carpet because I don't think I'm as adventurous as I was when I was younger. At this point now, being a father of 2, I have about 15 minutes to an hour, to watch media before I go to bed. And so I don't find myself with the amount of energy and curiosity as I used to for finding new media. And I think that's
do you collect physical media? Do you collect Blu-rays? Do you collect, I mean, I'm assuming you still collect records, but
to what I have, again, you know what I mean? Financially, it's just not even the thing where I can even, we got the Disney Plus subscription, we got the Netflix, and the kids watch most of it. We had even the music I consume on a daily basis, there's a cat version of whatever popular kids soundtrack is part of what I listen to the most in the car rides, to and from school drop off. I'm listening to K-pop Demon Hunter covers with all cats. This is the majority of it. My older son, he'll pick up on stuff. Like we just watched Stranger Things. So now he has The Clash, Should I Stay or Should I Go on his playlist. So I get to
So you're not listening to Venus and Furs, right?
No.
You're not listening to the Velvet Underground?
No.
Your kids aren't into that?
No, I got nothing. Maybe one day, you know what I mean? I try, my older one likes Metallica because again, it was on Stranger Things. I'm like, okay. But I would, I tried putting Slayer on. I was like, can we at least go, if we're going to get into metal, can we go to Slayer? And my youngest, my 6-year-old was just like crying in the back seat. I was like, okay, I guess we can't do this.
I've been kind of investigating the catalogs of like Metal Blade records and like Combat records and like all those old like metal labels like in the 80s in LA. Like I've kind of been looking through their catalogs to see. I'm like, if you're into that stuff, it doesn't sound so different from it,
Sure.
But like the album artwork is so cool. And there's so much of it. I was like, how many of these bands even were there? There were so many of these bands.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like I've been spending some time investigating the catalogs of like old record labels, and like, so I'm like, what did I miss? What is missing from my collection that maybe someday I might like to buy? Not that I'm buying all of it. I'm just kind of like seeing what it, just want to see what's out there. No, awesome. But I mean, I love K-pop. Right? Oh. Like I know that sound like I'm really into K-pop actually.
Oh my god! As a music form.
As a music, okay. I love it.
I only really know it as the Demon Hunters, version of it. I don't have a whole side of it. I'm realizing I got another interview coming up. I want to make sure we get your plugs in. Where can people see the show and where can they buy your records? We didn't even get into the whole record label thing. We'll have to have you in for part 2 sometime. But for now, before I have to run, what are your plugs? Where can people follow you and find out more?
So I'm BJ Rubin. I mean, if you Google BJ Rubin, the BJ Rubin Show is like my YouTube channel will come up. So I have a YouTube channel. I also do. So we got our. What's up?
Oh, hold on. Hey, Andrew, hold on one sec. Yeah, this is my next interview. Let me get your plugs. And this is what I was saying was going to happen. I was like, oh no, my time went fast.
So I'm BJ Rubin. I make the BJ Rubin Show. I also have a blog called Pukekos. My record label is Dick Move Records. Pretty soon I have like every season when I do the show, I also have like a soundtrack album that accompanies it. So Mark Robinson from Unrest does a lot of original music for the show. And so it's this last season, he did 170 separate tracks, which is kind of insane. Most of them are like 6 seconds long. So the soundtrack album will be out soon. That'll be through, Dick Move Records on my Bandcamp or whatever. But it's also got like Letitia Sadier and a bunch of other people who performed on the show. And, I work with an artist named Billy G. Robinson. He was in a band called the BT Express in the 70s and 80s. I'm working on a reissue project with him that should hopefully be coming out next year. And I have a lot going on. And I should have made a list, but we ran out of time.
It's okay.
And laser discs are cool. I love CDs. And I'm bj@pukekos.org if you want to email me and talk about anything, if you have any questions. But yeah, BJ Rubin. If you look me up, there are a lot of other BJ Rubins in the world.
Awesome, BJ. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, there he is, BJ Rubin. Thanks so much, BJ, for coming on. It was great catching up and talking all things Arcania. Go to YouTube /BJ Rubin, or what do you do? How do you get to, what is the link for the BJ Rubin show on the YouTubes? I'll have a link in there in the bio if you are so inclined. Yeah, youtube.com/c/BJ Rubin. Rubin. I'm not sure what that C's there, what that's all about. But you can also go to pukekos.org. That's PUKEKOS.org. Also find him on the Instagrams, Dude McGraw. And, go tell him that I sent you. Go tell him that Hyphenate podcast sent you. And check out all of his, Arcanio weirdo underground documentation. He's got it all there. Thank you, everyone. Find us here on the podcast every Monday. We do a roundup show, the Hyphenate halftime kind of week in review, stuff that is up to date, news, old man ramblings. Things that are fun and interesting and commentaries of our times. And then every Thursday I do the interviews. That's this show you're listening to right now. You get an interview every Thursday and a roundup of life and bemusings every Monday. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I got. Tell me what you're doing. Find me on the Gmail, hyphenate@gmail.com. Let me know what you're up to. Send me links to your podcasts. And Instagram @Randy S. Randall. And we will see you out there. If you like the show, make sure to tell your friends and turn on the automatic downloads, like and subscribe, whatever else everyone tells you to do online, or do nothing. I don't care. Do whatever you feel like doing. But if you want more people to hear it, tell them about it, 'cause that helps. All right. See ya on Monday. Have a good Valentine's Day.
I saw the Strokes open for the Hot Snakes, right? Like I remember that was right. Like I remember the Strokes as an opener. I walked in when the White Stripes played at Mercury Lounge. I bought a ticket at the door that night. It wasn't even sold out in advance. And the first opener that night was the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, So it's like, I feel like I was in that scene and I missed out on documenting all the stuff that really wasn't ever documented.